Good morning. It's Friday. It's Friday. Yay. Okay. So, I've talked a lot about, being in a transition in my life. And, I've been thinking a lot about it and thinking about the impact of it, the benefits and challenges of that. And like, how do you cope through that? So that's what I'm talking about today on Thoughts from the Car is navigating what we call liminal spaces. A liminal space is the in-between of the old you and the new you psychologically. As we grow, change, evolve, and it's the already but not yet space. It's the space where we have made a step forward and realize a change needs to happen or are in process of changing the way we think, feel, believe, etc. And it's that temporary place of leaving what was and becoming what is. It's already but not yet, and it's temporary. That is the big thing about this, about liminal space, is that it is temporary. All these transitions we're going through are temporary because old becomes new. It's about becoming the most favorite version of yourself, because you go from something that you realize is not working to something that is working, or that you want to become. A lot of times with becoming, we've talked about this, is unbecoming. So sometimes the liminal space is that place where we are learning new skills, having new beliefs, starting new habits, taking on new perspectives, developing resilience, and also letting go of all the things that were no longer serving us. It's the bridge where who you were and who you are becoming or unbecoming, that it's uncomfortable. And it has both positive and negative effects on who we are and who we become and what we believe. And it's not all sunshine and roses, and it's not all bad either. There are both positive and negatives to it. So if you find yourself in this weird space, this liminal space, this uncomfortable transition, hi, me too. And many people you probably don't even realize. So first, let's talk about what are the challenges. Let's talk about the negatives first, because we want to get those out of the way. The challenges is it is a huge time of uncertainty and stress, confusion, and is oftentimes seen as a burden. There's lots of misunderstandings oftentimes in our relationships during this time, and it can leave us feeling completely overwhelmed and honestly kind of want to quit and be like, I was better off being who I was, which most of the time is not true. I'll tell you 99.99999% of the time, that's not true. Okay. Even though we feel overwhelmed and we're unsure and uncertain and have a lot of anxiety, it could go into depression for some people, depending on the reason for the liminal space. It leaves you feeling raw, exposed, vulnerable, and just completely unsure of yourself. You might feel a lot of insecurity. These are some of the challenges that we have. But, well, I don't want to get to the benefits yet. But that's not the only thing, right? We can feel adrift during these times. We can feel like we don't really have answers for things, or we don't know what we're doing or where we're going or how things are going to work out. And yeah, right there with you. If you're identifying with this, you're like, oh my gosh, Brianna, yeah, this is where I'm at. Hi, yes, yeah, party of one here, maybe party of two now that you're here, or maybe a party of 1,000, depending on how many people watch this video. Those liminal spaces are these places where we are completely emotionally turbulent. We can react a lot more than respond during these times. And the reasons for this is because these liminal spaces, these times of transition, oftentimes expose unresolved trauma, and they might be the result of significant loss and or change that we're making in our lives, for our better, right? We're making the changes for our better, or the changes could be, maybe not for our better. Maybe we didn't have a choice in what the change is. And so that's why we're feeling all these negative emotions and having some negative responses to reactions and responses to this liminal space that we find ourselves in. Okay, but there are benefits. So the benefits of the liminal space is we learn that discomfort can become our comfort. We learn, we have new ideas. We discover a purpose in our life that maybe we were not aware of before. These liminal spaces provide an opportunity for huge growth. We can either grow or decline, and that becomes our choice, how we look at things. It can renew commitment in our life, maybe for relationships. It can renew commitment to ourself. It's the place where we oftentimes will discover things that we love about ourselves that we didn't even know existed. It allows us to discover things about ourselves that we didn't know were there. It's talents, skills, giftings that we didn't know were there, because it allows us to have greater reflection on who we are and how we react to things and emotions that we experience in our life. It gives us greater self-awareness overall, because oftentimes when we find ourselves in these liminal spaces, we have more like alone time and we have more silence because of all of those challenges that I talked about before. Oftentimes we might pull back from relationships, or we might pull back from our responsibilities, and we actually give ourselves time to reflect and become self-aware of who we are. It's also a really awesome time. These liminal space times is a great time for clarifying our priorities, whether that priority is ourself, a relationship, a career, whatever we need clarity on in our life, of the reason why we are finding ourselves in this place of transition from what was to what is, or what we want to become, or the unbecoming, like that liminal space there. So some examples of what that liminal space could be from, or what it is. It could be taking a sabbatical from work. It could be a position that we previously had. It could be a time when we experienced loss. That could be loss from walking away from a relationship. It could be loss of a death of a loved one. It could be the loss of a career where we had to make a change for whatever, loss of health, all kinds of loss, grief, right? That big grief. We've talked about grief a lot. These liminal spaces are the place that we're grieving into acceptance. That liminal space there can be a very long, wide liminal space. It can be where we're leaving a relationship and building boundaries for ourselves, because maybe we didn't have those in our previous relationship. It can be a place where we are acquiring new knowledge and skills. So I'm thinking about all my little friends who are going off to college for the first time. So it's like a whole life transition of mom and dad are taking care of me to now I have to take care of myself, and I'm learning all these new things about myself and my situation, and how to take care of myself. Like, that's a huge change and transition, and that liminal space for many students can be very overwhelming, and very beneficial as well. So yeah, what's a huge benefit of these liminal spaces, like the ones that I've named in particular, is that it requires us to get creative. We have to use creativity in order to problem solve and overcome situations that we've never probably encountered before. It makes us have to be adaptable, not just to our environment, but also to the way our brain is working. So sometimes I've talked before about my rude brain, and I've had a lot of rude brain time in this liminal space that I find myself in, where my brain is just constantly like trying to tell me how bad, wrong, awful I am, and everybody around me is, and how I need to be looking for red flags in every person that I come across because of situations that I've had in my life in the last couple of years. And the last like 20 plus years of my life that I've kind of ignored and have all come to fruition. And now I have to deal with that. So now I find myself in this liminal space of having to be adaptable and having to be resilient on my own, having to change and become something that I never thought I would have to become. And it's a lot. It's a lot for our brains to process. And so what does the brain do? The brain tries to protect itself, and it tries to tell us to watch out for this. And this is where discernment comes in. And we have to be able to identify what is truth and what is just our brain being rude to us. So we have to be adaptable in that way. We have to be resilient in that way. We have to get creative, and we have to have a lot of discernment, to be able to know, like, what is the truth of the situation and what is a lie of the situation, or feeling that we're having, or emotion that we're experiencing. Okay, so we talked about the challenges, the benefits, what this liminal space is, and giving you some examples. So what do we do if we find ourselves in this space? How do we actually navigate this well? Okay, so here we go. I can tell you what I've been doing, and I'll tell you what's been really working for me. The first thing is putting a positive spin on uncertainty in general, because that's what liminal space is ultimately, is complete uncertainty. Because like I said, we sometimes feel adrift, and we feel like we don't have a roadmap, and we thought we were going one direction and now we're going in this other direction. So putting the positive spin on the uncertainty and seeing it as an adventure rather than a burden. So, and it's not toxic positivity. It's using that this is an adventure. This is an opportunity. This is, that positive mindset of, this thing that's really hard is not a burden. It's for my own good, and it's for my growth and for my evolving into being a better human for myself and others around me. And how we perceive what we are going through, and how we perceive this situation and this psychological transition period that we're in is what is going to is the power that we have in order to empower our minds and control our own minds, so that rude brain is not constantly kicking us in the ass. So, and that doesn't mean we're going to be perfect at it, because like I said, I have been having the last few days of my rude brain. It's been so rude to me, and it's not that we always have complete control. It's that balance between having control and letting go of control, and putting that positive spin on it really helps us to be able to see the situation, or see the circumstance, or see the new thing that we're doing in the uncertainty as an adventure rather than a burden. And part of this, I would say the second point then that really helps in navigating this time period is clarifying your process. the process and what we have to remember is this liminal space is temporary. It is something that we have to remind ourselves about all the time. So when we're feeling stuck, we're feeling stagnant, we feel like we're not moving forward, we feel like we're getting stuck in our rude brain, we feel like nothing is happening and I'm not reaching any of my goals, I don't even know who I am anymore, I wish I could go back to what I was because at least that was comfortable. We have to remind ourselves that this liminal space that we're in is temporary. We're in the already but not yet, and it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to have challenges, but we also have to remember all those benefits that we talked about. And the way we do that is, guess what? We journal about it, writing it down, having a record. When we record our journey, it helps us to go back and read all the different changes and to see that forward progress. Because when we're in our heads about things, we're not necessarily thinking about, but I've made this change and this has been a good thing. And look how far I've come already. Because when you look back, you aren't necessarily seeing things completely clearly. All you're seeing is oftentimes the long journey ahead of you of where you're going to go. And we don't necessarily see everything that we've overcome already. So when we journal about it, it helps us kind of see that record of forward progress. And what's helpful in journaling is we can write down our goals. We can write down what we're grateful for. And it kind of becomes a roadmap for our journey in general. It kind of becomes a roadmap of, I saw that thing and I saw that progress. So that means I'm going to have, forward progress maybe in that same area, but in a deeper way. So journaling, it helps us be more mindful. It helps us become more self-aware of what we have overcome. And this can just propel us forward a little bit faster because we're already seeing where we have become, and it just gives us confidence that I can do this, I can overcome this. And if we've ever been in other liminal spaces before, in other areas of our life, going back and reading those allows us to know that I'm going to get through this. I can do this. I've done something like this already and I'm still here. I'm still alive. I'm still thriving. I'm still living. I'm still having forward progress. Another thing that has really been helpful for me is surrounding myself with positive support. So sometimes this means removing other support or other factors in our life. It's not really support. Oftentimes we need to remove the toxic or negativity that is not allowing us to progress. Maybe that's what's keeping us stagnant. So sometimes that means we have to remove all those negative influences, all those toxic things. And that can include relationships. That can include spaces where we feel comfortable and removing ourselves from those spaces. It can mean removing ourselves from social media. Maybe we need to take a social media break. I have done that on certain platforms. I've kind of removed myself from engaging in certain platforms because of the people there or because of the influences there or the type of support or lack of support that you might receive there. And there's like a perceivedness on some of our platforms that we don't want to lean into anymore. And we need to remove ourselves from it because of where we're at now. And we don't want to go back to what we were. We want to move forward. And the news, I feel like that has been a huge thing for me, is removing myself from the news, which sometimes feels really irresponsible because you need to know what's going on in the world. I think, making sure that we are knowledgeable and educated about the world and what's going on in the world, but not cushioning ourselves in it and making it like everything for us. And sometimes we just need to remove ourselves completely, depending on the reason why we're in this liminal space. So that's all I'm going to say about that one. I think keeping it simple, keeping your goals simple, especially if you've come out of like a season of grief or you're removing yourself, you're like growing from a season of grief, you're in that liminal space of already but not yet. Simplify your tasks, simplify your goals. An example of this for like if you're coming out of grief specifically is maybe you're not eating. So maybe your goal is that you eat daily or shower daily or one little thing. And then you can just build upon that. When we're in that liminal space of not knowing where we're going and we're feeling adrift and we don't really know what to do, what the best thing to do is, having just that small goal for yourself helps you build. It just helps you build steps towards the roadmap, getting you to your destination of where you want to go. And when we make it more complicated, we tend to feel overwhelmed. So keeping it super simple and giving yourself grace in that, and compassion that you're not doing these overly complex or complicated things in your life right now. You are just doing the bare minimum, and that is okay. That is absolutely okay when you're in this liminal space. Let's see. And then the last thing I think really is seeking help. So for me, that means I went back to therapy. I've been in therapy now for the last several months. And also that means talking to people who have shared the experience that you have. And also for me, it means talking to your safe people. And for me, it's also been getting a coach so that I can move forward. I am a coach, but that also means I have a coach. I have someone who is helping me move forward in my life plans in this life transition I find myself so that I can keep forward with forward progress. Okay. So if you identify with any of these things, let me know. The challenge today is identify your liminal space. Identify what you were and what you want to become. And if you find yourself in this liminal space already, and you already know where you were and where you're going, give yourself compassion is the first thing, is the challenge, because that is a super big challenge for all of us in the liminal space. But also try one of these tips that I gave you to help you navigate. Maybe you're not using one of them, and you find yourself being challenged somewhere by something that I've said. And if you haven't talked to someone, if you're not talking to a coach or a counselor or even like your friends about this, your liminal space, and naming it as it is, I challenge you to do that today. Reach out to someone who can help you move forward in this place. Other than that, guys, have a great Friday and a great weekend.